This might just be like the whole time. So hopefully you're okay with a small child running around.
Everybody, and thank you for coming for this great artist talk. My name is Zoe. I'm a curator here at the Rochester Art Center, and we are very excited to have Preston Drum, who currently has an exhibition called Bubbles up on our second floor gallery, and I hope you got a chance to see it. If not, after the talk, we will have a little moment in which Preston can hang out around the gallery and like answer your questions. So the way Preston and I met is through a different project that is called Carry On Homes, and it was a collective of 5. Now we're 3 because people had babies and they, had other things to like take care of. So it was a great project, and it was awesome to be able to work with Preston in public art and curatorial work, and now as a curator, and like give him the chance to like do this exhibition. So the show runs from June 4th. They open on June 4th. It runs to October 17th. So plenty of time to like check out the galleries. And there will be a workshop with Preston on October 9th at 10 a.m. So watch out for that. It's going to be very fun. Well, just briefly, Buzzball is a site-specific installation in the Davies Gallery at the Art Center that combines painting, sculpture, and video to create an immersive facsimile of an American domicile. Drawing dual inspiration from his son's first word and the pervasive social condition the pandemic has brought upon us, Drum explored notions of domestic life inside of a bubble. Through nonlinear storytelling, the events of a never-ending day are stitched together to create a portrait of a family. So I think we can all relate to like a lot of the themes that Preston has explored in his show. And then I'm gonna stop talking.
Okay.
Right?
Hi, welcome all in the room. Just to let you know, I am vaccinated, Pfizer all the way. So we have that level of safety. I am going to speak without a mask, just so it's easier for elders to hear, and also for the recording to pick me up. This is a little bit of a weird kind of art talk because it is, well, for 2 reasons. Number one, it's a hybrid situation, so we have people from all over the country joining us that are in this room with you right now, which is kind of cool. But secondly, I'm not going to talk a lot about art, but so just come with me on this journey and we'll kind of see where it goes. And also, this is being recorded, so just by entering this room, you agree to be recorded, and hopefully that's okay. And thanks for joining us on Father's Day. I wanted to start first by delivering my deepest appreciations to my wife, Samantha. Yeah, a round of applause. Without her support and encouragement and tolerance, I would not be able to make the art that I make. So thank you, Sam. Thank you for putting up with everything that comes along with being married to this particular artist. And thank you for bringing up our 2 sons in a world and raising them with an open mind and an open heart. While they may not fully comprehend at the moment, mostly because my son is just staring at a YouTube video probably, but what's that?
Mickey Mouse.
It's Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, okay. But I did want to acknowledge and thank them for their pretty obvious contributions to the show. When you see it, there's a lot of content around them. And I gotta admit that I did not get their permission to use their likeness or stories. And I can assure you no releases were signed. But I did ask their mom, and she said, I don't care what you do. So. Now, I also want to take some time to thank the other most important woman in my life, and that's my mama, Cheryl Ann Duzatels. Her impact on my life is completely unmeasurable, and I'll have a lot more to share about her later in the talk. But lastly, I did want to thank Zoe and the rest of the RAC staff for inviting me to come and install this show, and also to develop the content and work on it for several months, because this show has been in the works since November of last year. It's really refreshing to have a venue that's so dedicated to supporting local artists, especially in the wake of what we can all agree is like a very tumultuous and crazy year for the arts and arts institutions. So it's really nice to see Rochester Art Center thriving and bringing in new and exciting art. Outside of my own, there are many other shows here that are awesome and that you should take the time to check out. So I'm going to start this presentation with a screening of a performance that I delivered to a small audience in 2015. This piece was entitled The Epic of Edna in 6 parts. The piece is probably going to read to you kind of like an animation, but it was actually created live and in real time with brushed ink on a backlit scrim. So you can kind of see that in these images here. The recording has been sped up from the original 15-minute performance to about 2 minutes and 30 seconds for brevity and continuity. And the piece uses shadow play to tell the life story of my maternal grandmother, Edna Rowley. Many family histories don't go beyond birth dates in the back of a Bible. As a result, every family has stories that are passed down through generations by word of mouth. And over time, these stories change, much the same way the epics of ancient societies were crafted from long-running games of telephone. Characters become larger than life, and details morph into embellishments or just simple untruths. Edna, she passed away long before I was born, so I only know her through the oral recounts of my mama. So as the story goes, she was born in a small farming village in the East, U.S., met my grandfather, had several children, and then passed away tragically from choking on a sandwich while she was bowling. I did not consult with my mama to validate the story. It comes only from my memory of my mother's tellings. And unfortunately, my mother's current condition renders her unable to confirm or deny these details. So let's watch the Epic of Edna. So maybe these slides will make a little bit more sense now that you've seen the actual performance. You can kind of understand what was going on logistically. So visitors to the Bubble Show downstairs, they're going to note that this shadow play, it's not a part of the current show. So you might ask, why did I include this in this presentation? Well, when I conceived of this piece back in 2015, I had a startling revelation I actually didn't know my grandmother's name. My mom never said it to me. I don't think this was a choice of malice. I think it was my mom had just had her own life. She had her own children, her own preoccupations to attend to. And, she was running her own businesses and keeping 7 children alive and out of trouble. And this is all without the help of man. History has a tendency to evade us when it's not carried with us. So I called my mom. I told her that I was making an art piece about her mother. And then I had to embarrassingly admit, I don't know your mother's name. I don't know Grandma's name. And then in the parking lot of the studio, I stared at the overcast sky as my mom said, "You know, Preston, I can't remember my parents' name right now. I know it, I just can't recall it at the moment. So I'll have to tell you later." And then I said, "That's okay, Mom. You've had a long life, I understand." And then we carried on for a while talking about something else. That was the first moment, that was the first time that I thought something might be wrong with my mom. How does someone forget their parent's name? And furthermore, how does someone come to be 31 years old and not bother to ask what their grandparents' names are? So I feel compelled to apologize to the world and to you, but also I'm not sure that I did anything wrong. The nature of family, of my family, and our history and our inner workings is complicated, just like yours. And the conditions of blood relationships could fill galleries and volumes of Netflix series the world over for ages to come. Now, my mama has an excuse because she's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, a disorder that causes her brain to shrink from the death of cells and broken pathways caused by the buildup of plaque on neurons in her brain. Doctors and scientists, they don't really know why humans get this disease. Even as diagnoses grow with over 6 million Americans living with the disease right now, we seem to be facing a silent tsunami because there's no cure for this disease. This past year, deaths from Alzheimer's rose 16%. The rise is attributed to side effects of the pandemic, including isolation from quarantining and overworked and underpaid caretakers. People with this disease, they need to be engaged. And Zoom calls have only gotten us, so far. But nothing really compares to a real snuggle, right? I am a mama's boy, proud to admit it. And I always have been, for always will be. I spent years of my life riding next to her in her truck to job sites and watering plants with her and delivering newspapers. And the distance from my mom that I've felt since I moved to Minnesota, it's hurt. It's hurt a lot. And it's motivated me to make several artworks about her and our relationship. And the bedroom in Bubbles downstairs, that's just one in a long line. This distance has caused my mind to wander, and I imagine there's a little gremlin in my mama's brain that pops her thoughts with a needle. Like a child poking a bubble with their finger. It's an innocent and amoral action, but what's lost is a life. It's our duty as friends and family of people with this disease to keep their memories alive, even as we make memories of our own. Do you remember your first word? I don't. And I'm sure you can guess, I can't ask my mama. I do know my son Elvis's first word. His first word was bubbles, uttered in awe of a cheap battery-powered bubble machine from Walmart that came to life for the first time in our living room. It makes that really annoying noise. And I hope I never forget the sound of that word leaving his lips. There are a lot of things I hope I never forget, but I'm sure they'll be lost. So much of my art and life is spent recounting the past, thinking about the past, trying to grow from the past. Personal, professional, societal, a perpetual condition that works in opposition to my trades, art, gardening, and my life as a parent. All of these pursuits, art, gardening, and parenthood, they're pursuits that are fueled by this idea of change. And I'm not talking about hedonic tendencies or the unfulfillable hole left by capitalistic consumption. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these powers that drive us. They're deeper than us. A force that pushes you to reckon with the present. So that's why I don't blame my mama for not telling me her parents' name. Bubbles are magic. They're one of the first manifestations of invisible forces that we encounter as children. They are symbols of how the world works beyond our comprehension and out of sight and out of mind, until gases are captured in a membrane and brought to our fingertips. Like the coronavirus, we can't see them, but they affect us in resounding ways and are often only observed through destruction. Right? This pandemic has mutated the meaning of the word bubbles. Like time stripping my mama of her memories. We can no longer recall the moment the bubble is blown, but we can still feel the magic shock wave of the bubble being popped. Our past becomes our present, and we never seem to be able to place the timeline of any recent event. Some experts are calling this effect on our perception temporal discontinuity. Was that last week? Or 6 months ago? Or last night? It's a common refrain of conversation in our recent lives, right? This real-life condition reminded me of a film that I saw years ago called The Tree of Life. This is written and directed by Terrence Malick. This film, it floats through time, from present day to memories of childhood to dinosaurs in the cosmos. Our world and our existence is now and always will be a series of time-traveling bubbles. And how do you measure that perception? What is the distance between my own view and the view of my son and the view of my mama? How do our conditions affect what we see and understand to be true? Will I know what it's like to have dementia? Have I forgotten to see how a child sees the world? My mama, she bought her house in 1974 in Charlotte, North Carolina for something in the ballpark figure of $20,000. And then my brother sold it just a few years ago for nearly $300,000. Thank God, because we used that money to pay for the treatment for the memory care ward. So this house, it was her honor, and outside of her children and her businesses, it was her greatest accomplishment. And I remember, I'll never forget, the day she sent the last check to the mortgage company. She was so ecstatic. The American dream fully realized. But it was a difficult decision to diffuse her autonomy and place her in the elder care home, right? To take her away from her honor. But the disease had already made up the decision for us. My wife, she bought her house in 2018 while she was pregnant with our first son, Elvis. Every night during the 6 weeks and then 6 weeks after he was born, we had a ritual. We would usher into the bathroom, and I would kneel on the floor, and she would sing some song from memory, typically a 90s or 2000s era pop gem, while I unsheathed the needle and pinched her belly fat and injected a blood thinner into her stomach. Another bubble. We had to do this every night she was pregnant with our first son, and then again this last year with our second son. And this produced a collection of hundreds of syringes, a portrait of the boy before he was born. A testament and physical token of my wife's commitment and sacrifice. The adage, in whatever form you hear it or whatever form you say it, people with kids, they don't get it. It sounds more true after you go through something like this, right? In motherhood, it's a supremely special club. Fathers, dads, papas, whatever you call us, we will never really actually get it either. We come close, but we still have a hold of our egos. It seems to be a cliche for the artist and the writer and the musician and the thinker to have kids, and then they spend the next few years making work that's all about the kids, even though it's actually about themselves, coming to terms with the fact that they aren't the center of the universe. So Mary Kelly's postpartum document, this kept coming in my mind too while I was working on Bubbles. It's a long-running project analyzing her relationships in the development of her child over years. A high, lofty idea of art in my mind. Something I looked up to and held in the highest regard of academic considerations. The stuff of art history books and essays. Not until I had a kid did I realize it's impossible to escape the influence. It's an everyday thing. It changes your DNA. My son Elvis instructing and insisting ad nauseum that I draw the cat in the hat and cows from memory over and over and over and over and over again. A smile, a hug, a laugh, a cry, a diaper, a spit up, a vomit, a block of cheese, Hot Wheels, dance session with Cuckoo Kangaroo on YouTube. It's a river shaping rocks. Being a parent is not like I had imagined. It's ecstasy, it's torture, and it's boring, all in the same moment. My broken mind can only go as far to compare my upbringings as a latchkey kid to my son's upbringing in this pandemic bubble. Where I was denied my mama, she was always working. I'm perpetually present in my son's life, and it's gotta be nauseating for him, because I can be really annoying sometimes. So I got one last story before we go. So I mentioned earlier, my mom, she was a newspaper carrier for 30 years or something like that. She did this for many, many years. It's a club like no other. There's a deep-seated understanding when you meet another newspaper carrier. Like, you just get each other. I tried unsuccessfully to make an art piece about this years ago called Sunday Sub. That's a whole nother story. So a chilly Sunday morning, early. So indigo sky, that kind of mood where you kind of just woke up from a dream and like you're not really sure where you are, what's going on. That's the world of the newspaper carrier. My mama and I, we had bagged up about 500 newspapers, like those fat ones, the Sunday newspapers with all the coupons and the cartoons, the really big ones. And this is a weekly gig for us. We packed them to the ceiling in our white Ford Taurus station wagon. I think it was an 89 or a 90. We set out to deliver them to the cul-de-sacs of a suburban mega development called Highland Creek. So in transit, I would lay on top of this giant pile of papers in the back, floating in a dreamlike cloud on top of newspapers. And then it would be my job to take the newspapers and hand them to my mom or set them down so that she could grab them easily. And she would just go, "Paper! Paper!" And I would just have to hand them down. So we had a rhythm going. We were a machine. We did this every week. Everything was going great. We were rocking the classic rock, driving down the left side of the road until we noticed some smoke coming from the air vents. I alerted my mom and I told her, "Mom, the smoke's burning my throat." She insisted, "Everything's fine. It's just a little bit of oil on the engine just burning off. Don't worry." Well, this trickle that was kind of like a cigarette, it eventually turned into a billowing deluge, like epic amount of smoke. So she came to a stop in the cul-de-sac and jumped out. She said, "I'm going to check the engine." And I remember, I'm wedged in between the ceiling of the car and newspapers floating over the back seats. And then she began to scream, "Oh my God, Preston, get out of the car, get out of the car." So I crawled out of a half open window in the back seat and I fell on the ground on my hands. And at that exact moment, I look over and I saw flames blast out of the bottom of the engine and envelop the side of the car. My mama was screaming and crying hysterically, "Preston, get help, get help, get help, Preston." So I rushed to the cul-de-sac, probably about 5 different houses, one after another, pounding on the door, screaming, "Help us, our car's on fire, help, help." And I could see other kids peering out of their second-story bedroom windows, looking down at us with curiosity and confusion and fear, watching our car burn to the ground. And then finally, I think, like I said, it was the 5th or 6th house, older white couple ushered us into their kitchen, and they called the fire department, And we sat on their porch for the next hour watching the volunteer firefighters watch our car burn up. So after the fuel had burned out and the tires exploded, and they did eventually extinguish the flames. It was the sun was rising right at this moment. And at that moment, a flock of Canadian geese flew overhead, and pink sunlight reflected off the bottom of their wings. And they were honking, honk, honk, as they do, right? Honk, honk. It was like the most beautiful thing this city boy had ever seen in his life up to that moment. And then my mom, she turned to me and she said, "That's God, Preston," telling us everything's going to be all right. My mama, she's not a church-going woman. And, you know, the whole man with a beard up in the sky, that's still pretty far from my vision of what a higher power is. But still, that moment keeps coming back. It keeps popping back into my mind over and over again this last year. In the face of supreme terror, absolute destruction, and seemingly invisible lost control, we have to keep our eyes open, looking for signs that everything's going to be all right. So to be a parent in these times, it's to be an optimist. And I hope to God we're not just fools trapped in a bubble. So thank you very much.
Look outside!